As a creative professional, you geek out about your craft, about the gadgets that you buy, the updates on the new software, and figuring out how to work this out, techniques that you do, tips and tricks. And it can be very frustrating after doing all that research and putting all that work into your craft to realize that your business is not taking off. Like, you do good work. Why don't you have new clients? Or why is it so hard to get clients that pay or not? And are not a pain in the butt, you know? Could it be that stigma of the starting artist is actually real? I believe it doesn't have to be. I believe for most of us, actually the opportunity to make a good business out of our creativity is there. And that's why this podcast exists. This is the Fresh Ideas for Creatives, and I welcome you to take a seat at the table and join me. We believe here that creatives that pair their craft with business skills never starve. And that's why every week we share stories and tips and interviews with experts so you can learn from the recipes of success and you can apply them to your business. In today's episode, I want to explore something cool because we are in October, and October is a spooky month, at least here in the United States. And I believe one of the things that is probably holding you back is not lack of talent, is not lack of market opportunities, is not even that your pricing is too high or too low. It's not even AI. I think it's fear. Fear is the main thing that holds us back, because if we cannot overcome the fear in our head, we cannot overcome anything else that is in front of us. It just prevents us from even taking action. So I want to explore today the topic of fear. Every project that you have or every opportunity that you face has an amount of fear attached to it. The reason is simple. Every one of these things is something new. And by default, humans, we are programmed to fear new things because they could potentially be a threat. So if there's a new project that you've never done, say that you've always done book illustration, and somebody asks you about a project that has to do with apparel, with clothes, okay? Or something that has to do with, I don't know, advertising, things that are different from what you tend to do, they can seem scary at the beginning. Or maybe you are going to interact with a client that has a big logo name, right? You may have working with mom and pop shops throughout your whole career so far. Maybe it's people who are local or who are referrals, and suddenly, I don't know, Microsoft or Apple or big names are knocking on your door, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to screw this one up. So we're going to talk about how to face those fears. And to give you some context, let's explore this through the lens of film. And I'm going to give you today 3 tips so that you can be more productive and less stressed out, and reframe how you see things so you can take those opportunities and actually make them work for you. I'm sure you're probably familiar with the name of Alfred Hitchcock. He's the master of suspense. At least that's the tag that he has, how he's best known. And there's this very famous example in which somebody asked him, what is suspense? Like, how would you describe suspense? And he said, imagine 2 scenarios. There's one scenario where there's 2 people, they're chatting at a table, they're eating their meal, and suddenly a bomb explodes. It's like, okay, what happened there? Right? And there's this other scenario in which you have the same 2 characters eating the same meal, but you can see that there's a box under the table. And something tells you that box is going to detonate in 2 minutes. That is suspense. In the first scenario, something just happens. This is action, right? It's like, oh, okay, so now let's try to figure out what went into that, like what happened, what made it happen. But in the second scenario, people are more engaged in a way, but also more fearful because they know there's something that is coming up and something probably negative, right? A bomb is going to explode, it's going to kill them, right? Now, these 2 scenarios are working in 2 realms. The first realm is the physical realm, which is very evident. The characters are there, the bomb is there. And the other one is the emotional, and that emotional realm is what happens inside the expectator. So today, I want to encourage you to see your life for a moment. Just get out of yourself, and instead of seeing yourself as the hero of your own story, see yourself as the film director, the producer, the cinematographer, the person who is directing what's going on in the scene. And you're looking outside, right? You're removing yourself and taking a third party person, in this whole dynamic. You're seeing how things are developing. Your emotional reaction to that is very different. A lot of the times when we are encountering new situations, we're having this hero energy, but at the same time, we are feeding ourselves with information that is not there, that causes to have suspense. So, for example, you may have a conversation that is coming up with a prospect, somebody who wants to learn from you and your services, and there's nothing to it besides the curiosity to connect, and you see it as a time bomb, like a time ticking, right? A time ticking bomb. Goodness. So the suspense becomes part of you, and you're kind of dreading for it to happen because you feel like something's going to explode when there's no real evidence of that. So sometimes we make those things up. But let's explore first the physical scenario, and then we're going to talk about that mental scenario and see how you can overcome it. The physical realm is easier to change, and that's why I want to start there. Suspense fits on information. So the information that you have in your environment can deeply affect how you manage life, how you go about your life. So one of the easiest ways, and um, there's been a lot of research on this, and I forgot his name, but he wrote a name, The Power of Habit. And then there's the Atomic Habits with James Clear, and all this like books that talk about habit forming um, actions. They talk about the first thing is just kind of changing your environment, your physical environment. Because when you change your physical environment, you reduce the amount of clutter that is around it, and it helps you take automatic decisions based on what the information that you have there. So one thing, for example, about an environment, a physical environment that can be counterproductive for facing your fear, is having a lot of distractions around you. If you have your phone around you at all times, and it has all these pings and notifications on, it is something that will distract you and that will cause you unnecessary stress when you're thinking about projects that you need to do, when you're thinking about things that you want to deal with. When you go into social media, for example, that's a semi-physical environment, right? But the things that you see in your feed are the things that feed you, and you feed on that. So having able to remove unnecessary things that you don't really want to read about or hear about will help you live a life in which your environment is not affecting you emotionally so badly. Another thing to change your physical environment that you can do is like just clean up your desk. Make sure that there's no clutter around it, because that affects us. It is information that our brain is kind of taking, because our brains are assessing our environments at all times. So there could be an overload there that causes you to feel heavy, to feel like it's hard to come up to difficult situations when it requires more of your brain power, just because your environment is not the ideal one for that. The other thing would be like if you're going to have a conversation that is important, like say with a new prospect or with a client who is you're encountering a difficult situation there, an impasse in the relationship, or something happened and they're not very happy. Make sure that the environment that you choose to have that conversation is appropriate for that. for goodness sake, don't have that conversation when you're like driving or you're in a very busy, street and you're just walking around, because all those things will undermine how you affect this. It will create unnecessary stress, unnecessary fear around this interaction. Just be in a place where it's calm and make sure that they're in a calm place as well in order for the conversation to be productive. If you've made it this far in the conversation, it probably means that you're liking what you're hearing. And in that case, I'm going to ask you a very, very small but very meaningful favor. Would you please share this episode and tag me on Instagram? See, I cannot hear you, I cannot see you. The only way that I can know if I'm doing something right is if I get feedback from you. And sharing these things with other people, it's a great way for me to understand that I'm doing something right. So it helps me keep going, and it also gives me the fuel to keep pushing the boundaries and doing way better things. So thank you so much for listening, and now let's go back to the show. The second thing that you can do is to change your social environment. That is sort of physical, and that goes more to like the social media aspect. One anecdote that I always have close to my heart is when I first joined college for my graphic design degree. The first class, the drawing class that I had, was phenomenal. All my classmates were incredibly talented. There might have been a few that were outliers in not so talented, but it doesn't matter because all of them were super cool people anyway. And we had this thing that we will be drawing, like a still life or something like that. And every now and then somebody will take breaks and we'll just make rounds, seeing what everybody was doing, how they were doing. And we will all take rounds at some point and complement each other's work. But one of the things that was underlying in that environment was that all of us wanted to be great at drawing. All of us were really pushing to do great work, and all of us were really excited and passionate about drawing at all times. So when you get into an environment in which the default habit or the default attitude is to do I don't know, the kind of thing that you want to do. So in my case, in that I wanted to get better at drawing, I got into an environment inadvertently that where the people, all of them wanted to do that and were doing that. So if at some point I don't know, I don't feel it, I'm just kind of tired and don't want to do it, and I see everybody else drawing, is like, okay, I guess I'm doing it. The social environments really affects you in a good way. There's a phrase in Costa Rica. It says, las malas compañías corrompen las buenas costumbres. And in English, it means something like bad companies corrupt good customs or something like that, or good habits. And I believe the opposite is also true. Like good company, a good social environment will help you actually foster and improve and even like create discipline where you by yourself may not have it. So changing your social environment, that could be, just changing the people that you hang out with, changing the amount of things that you see online, the people that you talk, the conversations that you have online. I like LinkedIn for that reason, because I tend to join conversations where people are like adding value to it, and then it gets feed up and then it shows me those sort of things and I learn from them. So that's great. On Instagram, it might hit or miss. Sometimes people are just very outraged about things. So changing your social environment can really help you overcome the fear. Now, when you come to situations, again, with a client, or like you have to make a marketing campaign, or deal with some negotiation things, having a good environment of people who are not only good at it but really enthusiastic about learning about it will keep you accountable and will help you create opportunities to actually practice those things so you can become better. And if there's one thing that really erases fear, is having some experience. If you're experienced at something, you're not that fearful that it's not gonna work out. You're fearful about other things, but not about your capacity to do it because you've had the experience. So that social environment is super important. Now, all of those are external conditions. Like, what about your internal conditions? That's a little bit harder to address. And I've seen it in my life. You've probably seen this. If you're a bit of like me, you probably experienced this as well. That even though logically you understand the topic, putting it to action is really hard. For whatever reason, we have this resistance to do things that we find logic is like our feelings don't let us, or we feel like they don't let us, or we just uh, give up our control, give up our agency for the sake of convenience, for the sake of comfort. So I have learned that if you want to change your mind, if you want to change your mindset about something, one of the easiest, okay, let's not say it's easy, but one of the most effective ways to go about it is to start thinking about collecting evidence. Because when you collect evidence for yourself, not somebody else collecting it from you, when you collect evidence for yourself, you start to disprove your assumptions. So, in plain English, that means that if you feel like you're bad at drawing, and you start doing drawings and you start doing drawings and you start collecting them and you start seeing practicing specific things to improve and you start seeing the progress, when you see the progress, you can no longer say that you're bad at drawing because you are improving. You can say, oh, I was bad at drawing, but you cannot say I'm still as bad as I was. Like, no matter how much you do, yeah, you could be always a perfectionist, right? And feel like I'm not as good as whoever, I'm not like the best at, but you cannot say that you're bad anymore. So the mental context sometimes just changes with evidence. Now, I'm in a point in my career in which I've collected enough evidence to have this self confidence that I am good at certain things. So in this podcast, for example, I can say, well, I'm not great at podcasts, but I think this episode is better than the first one. I can hear the way that I express myself, and I'm only like 4 episodes in, maybe 6, and I can feel the difference already. But I've also been doing like public speaking for a while. If I compare myself to something, and I have recordings of me talking when I was in my early 20s, like I cringe. I'm like, oh my gosh. And that is proof of progress. If you don't cringe at something that you did many years ago, it means you haven't grown a lot. So cringing is a good thing. In my case, I see this as changing my mental context in days where I'm down, where I'm don't not feeling like, we all have these things. We sometimes have days and we just feel like we are not worth anything, and that everything that we're doing is just stuck, in a rut. So in those times, having something to compare it with, that mental state that I have right now with the previous state that I had, and realizing, yeah, there's a contrast here. I'm actually, even though I don't feel it, I'm doing better. And that helps me overcome that fear of doing the thing that I want to do. So to be super practical or super explicit, well, not explicit, but like just to the point, an example, the main business that I have is visual notes. So I go to events all the time and capture in real time the ideas that speakers and audience are sharing. And this is for the purpose of enhancing connection, for people to not just have a lot of data thrown at them, but also make sense of it through storytelling, and also allow people to feel connected with the experience, not that they're just consuming, but they're part of that. And the main challenge that this kind of work has is that you go there and you start drawing things that you have just heard. Like you're reacting as a sort of improv to the ideas that are being shared, and you're processing them into drawings in real time. And that is hard. That is really hard. It requires a lot of practice. Because of that, and because you don't have the chance to do like, rough sketches and different versions and then kind of polish, and take a few days to do the thing that you have to do it right away, there can be a lot of stress associated with it. Like, what if I cannot hear very well? What if the accent is very thick and I don't understand what it's saying? What if the topic is just above my mental capacity and I cannot distill it into information? There can be a lot of those questions roaming around my head. But now I'm in a point in which I've made so many, like hundreds of events, that I can go to an event and still feel like, oof, there's a little bit of stress going on, because I'm going to face a new scenario. But I can look back and say, hey, I've had a lot of scenarios, a lot of difficult sessions, a lot of challenging topics that I've overcome, and people have been happy. So if I did it before, I can do it again. And that gives me confidence. I know it's not the same scenario. It can never be. But I know that I have the ability to overcome an adversity, whichever it is, and adapt and make it work regardless of the scenario. So what I do is I tell myself and I feed my mind with moments in my past where I've been able to overcome those things. If we go back to the Alfred Hitchcock idea or metaphor, like story, right? If that box that was inside or under the table, if the narrator tells you that it's full of confetti, that it's going to explode, but it's confetti, like nothing's going to happen, really. You're like, all right, you're just kind of waiting for the giggle, right? Or if you know that one of the characters is Chuck Norris, then it's perfectly safe. Even if it's a bomb, a nuclear bomb, it's going to be all right. It's probably going to eat it, like thinking it's a cucumber or something like that. So your level of stress changes because, on the one hand, what's actually inside that bomb could be something positive, could be something exciting or fun. On the other hand, you can think, one of the characters has overcome adversity before. It has a track record of doing it, so it's all good. In your case, what is the thing that you're going to face right now? Like, what is the conversation that you're going to have? What is the opportunity that you're going to discuss? Or what is the new offer that you're going to test? What is the new campaign that you're going to put out there? Could it be that inside that box of uncertainty, there's actually confetti? Could it be possible that actually going and doing this thing with open a box that is not a Pandora box, but actually a box that is full of gold, that is full of cash, that is full of opportunity, that is full of great reviews and great experiences and learning? So that is just sometimes seeing at the thing and changing the meaning it has, which happens inside of your brain. And it's a choice. You have to choose it. And the other one is just what I was saying, seeing your own track record, maybe not in the same, vertical. Maybe it's not in the same kind of product, but maybe it's just in general in life. You have survived and you have thrived in life in many instances, and you can do it again. So those are essentially 3 tips that I wanted to give you today, so that you can find opportunities to practice them and think about how to apply them into your life. Change your physical environment, make showing up less scary. Then change your social environment, get yourself support and guidance that can give you courage and make things easier to try because it's the default in that ecosystem. And then third, change the mental context. Frame things as, what if this is something positive instead of something negative? And then also seeing your track record so that you can convince yourself that you have what it takes to make it because you've done it before. So I hope that this helps you have less fear as you approach new things in your practice, in your business, and just in general in your life, because this is essentially things that you can apply to any area of your life. That's all for today's episode. If you enjoyed this, please share with a friend. I would appreciate it very much. And thank you for listening to the Fresh Ideas podcast, where we believe that creatives who pair their craft with business knowledge never starve. And that's why I have conversations with you, or I invite experts to reveal recipes for success so that you can try them in your business. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Pura vida.